I'll tell you what, we're just at the hour, so I'll do the formal bit. So this is an OpenChain tooling workgroup meeting. Normally these meetings are chaired by Oliver from Siemens and sometimes Marcel from Bosch, two of our board members. I'm stepping in today because Oliver has a conflict. So what we're going to do is go through some discussion topics. And the idea is to share information freely about open source tooling for open source compliance. Before we get started, I will just show our antitrust policy notice. We show this at the beginning of every Linux Foundation meeting, and you'll be very familiar with it if you're a regular. Now, today's agenda is something special. There's a new project in the EU, Octet. There's a new project coming from China. There is something exciting happening with software heritage, and there's a ton to cover in any other business. As we go through, I'll be mentioning some things outside of Europe, like, for instance, Fosslite, which is a very interesting project that's been running for some years in Korea. We're very fortunate to have Wan Jae, who is one of the leads of the Fosslite project. He's with LG Electronics. He's a good friend, and he visited me a couple of months ago. He's based in Seoul. But I'll tell you what, let's jump straight in. We just had a webinar about the Octet project. Now, this is a new EU-funded project. So it's one of those, the European Commission puts out these funding things, and a few million are going into this Octet project. And basically, open source tooling for open source compliance. We just had a webinar. I'll correct my typo here. The webinar was yesterday, and it's been published on the OpenChain website about 40 minutes ago. And long story short, ORT, that's Open Source Review Toolkit, and About Code will be two of the European-based open source tooling for open source compliance and security projects funded. And I wanted to open the floor and check, have you heard of this? It is very new. It might be your first time. And what other EU projects could benefit from this type of funding? What can we do to help? So let's throw the first question out. Have you heard of the Octet project? And do you have any questions about it? Marcel, hello. Just see Marcel joined, currently unmuted.
Well, I can start. I haven't heard this before, and I think it's interesting. And the project that could, benefit definitely in the CRA comes to my mind.
Yes. I think the CRA is one of the key things that makes this really timely. And of course, historically, we've had some challenges in getting funding for open source tooling, for open source compliance, and B, getting projects to work together. So it's very nice to see ORT and About Code are going to collaborate. If I remember correctly, ORT, Open Source Review Toolkit, originated inside Bosch and has been a community project for a decade or more. Is that correct?
No, it was originated in Here Maps, and we just jumped on this after. So we started with Software 360 and Software 360 Antenna, and had done a look on this ORT thingy, and this is the nice story behind that. So we were in Prague in the OSS summit, and we both showed, or I think there were even 3 or 4 presentations, and that also shows the power of those community events, by the way, where we looked at each other and said, your slides look like ours. We should talk. And then after this event, and in parallel there was the EclipseCon in Ludwigsburg, and after that event we started this tooling group here. So this was the the original thing, and then we presented all our setups, and then we saw, okay, the ORT setups seemed to be much more mature than what we had. So I think Software C60 with Software C60 antenna is still working. So if you have a very limited scope, maybe only limiting on Java Maven, Java Gradle, that still works. But as we had, and I guess other companies too, so then JavaScript came in with npm, then Python, then so it got bigger and bigger and broader, I would say, and there this wrapper setup was much more sustainable, because at the end, ORT is a wrapper orchestrator, and you can orchestrate whatever you want. And that's the power. When we started, it was completely different. So we had a tool, and I called it. We kind of glue coded some balconies on top of whatever. It was mainly also commercial tools, right? And now with ORT we switched the whole thing, right? So it's not some big tool and then you have some customized something, but you have a customizable wrapper where you can really block in everything, orchestrate everything.
And clarifying that, first of all, it's great to have the history, and especially, big thanks to the team at here. So I think then one follow-up question is SW360 still used a lot?
Yeah, I will go there. Yeah,
Hey.
So basically, you got exactly my clue, because I was talking about that. So yes, but let's say that in the middle of these two, SW360 is the glue that is missing, because not about code, not ORT provided what SW360 do, and SW360 don't do anything. But there's a big but. The SW360 on the current state is basically probably not suitable for exactly what they need here. The thing is that we don't have another project. We don't have an there. So there are things that happen right now in SW360. One side is that is until end of July, probably the old code base is done, and then the new code base will appear. So we have the separation that we needed to make SW360 evolve. Inside Cariad, we are doing a completely, let's say, reshaping our SW360 to just jump away from the old database format parts and go into new databases like Postgres, like we can connect to ORT and connect to the other tools itself. And then after we do that inside Cariad, we are published this open source that we want to make it completely started to reshape SW360 to become less and less tied to only Siemens way. That's what we want to do inside Cariad. So to make it like a generic project. It's just the goal for our internal project was always make SW360 embrace as a generic that not depending on fixed things. Like in killing things, and Marcel, you know what I talk about the model, the old model part, and the whole thing about the old tooling part, like Trifid. So yes, SW60 could be the glue of this means, but not SW60 that you have today, but the ones that you can have after July. But we would need help at some point, because the majority of the SW360 that exists today is basically Siemens, a very, very few parts of Toshiba and us on Cariad, and we are not working towards Cariad, but try to make SW360 generic, completely different from the Siemens. Of course, is company-oriented. They always steering the project to keep the way they're doing. So I'm not discarding the possibility that for a while there's a SW360 next evolving that can fit on this vision here, completely a part of the original SW360, just getting the original parts. So this is exactly the status. But The answer about that is that we don't have an alternative to SW360, and SW360 is far from be perfect. You can get allegedly that Word Server can do some project management. No, it don't. And you can do it, says that Deja Code from About Code can do project management in some way. No, it can't. It's different views. Is dashboards on top of their own tooling chain, but not exactly what's supposed to. So if someone can approach us and say, okay, maybe we can put SW360, the next one, in this wagon of Doctet, I'll be happy. And even to change whatever I needed to fit on this project. Nobody should be allowed to left alive if needed. So that's exactly my point. Yeah.
Did you also have a look at Foslight? Because I still remember it was 2-3 years ago, the presentation about this multi-project management. I think they had a really nice setup. Yeah, but when our team had a look at it, so they were struggling with the Korean comments.
The problem is not really, I know very well Foslight. The problem with Foslight is exactly the same problem with old SW360. The code base and the structure is most similar and old. We cannot afford anymore to use these old patterns. It's not fitted for the modern. So it's something that was developed both SW360 and Foslight. It's exactly the same vibe. It's developed in the time that something was not in the supply chain world and not distributed parts. There's is a very, very, very monolithic applications. It need to change. Doesn't matter if you jump on Foslight or SW360. It's the same thing. It's just different approach and different type of coding because one is PHP, although the one the base is Java, but that's it. So it's really not an option, unfortunately. I would say that current SW360 and Foslight is not an option at all, both of them. Next one, after we changing completely the code base in 1 month, this is starting to become an option, but then probably is not yet what is needed for this project. And if this, as I said, if this project want to have approaches, we, at least I go and push everything to change and toward this, because otherwise, I honestly, in a very short time, this will become a one company project, and so it becomes dead. I same thing as Foslight because very few people use it.
I have another observation here, perhaps also as part of this discussion, because what I really liked with Software C60 from the beginning was this meta model, right? So I also liked Liferay, to be honest, but not our developers. They hated it for maintenance thing. So it was, if we split the concept from the implementation, I would say the concept is cool. The implementation, I would just quote what Helio said. But what I observe at the moment is, and I don't know how far you're already informed about what's currently happening in SPDX 3.1 plus with those new profiles as the SPDX community, and I'm part of only one sub profile there, is currently really extending this, what we originally knew from SPDX 2x as this is in file exchange format, right, to a more or less real holistic meta model of everything. And now if we put these two things together and say, okay, I get now an SBOM in an SPDX 3.1x one day in future from a supplier, I then want to import it into my whatever database, then either ideally we have the same meta model, right? Then it would be easy, or we would have to have a mapping. Okay, this value goes here, this value goes there, etc., etc., and we have this this discussion again. So ideally, if we go with Foslight and Software C60, I would propose, or I don't know if you had a look at it, but I think it would make sense to have a common discussion also with the tech team from SPDX how we should handle this then in future. So especially as now we have a hardware profile team there in SPDX who really pushed the whole setup to have really a holistic setup. So you with the SPDX 3.1, with all what they currently plan, you could really completely describe a system in all variants. And this is just as a heads up. Maybe someone else also had a look at it, but this is my current impression. And because either I have a system like Software 360, Fosslite, wherever, who already has this meta model, and I fetch those metadata from different places and insert it in my database, or I already get a full-blown SBOM plus
Yeah, by the way,
metadata, and just need to collect all those SBOMs then at the end.
I can tell to you that yes, I'm already looking there, and actually is considered there, and you start in a experimenting site. This my I use it or as experiment for exactly this that you think about. So instead of doing it the old way, right? Just say mapping. These things go to these things go to exactly how SW360 works today in the for Cyclone DX and SPDX. What happens is that this is actually not sustainable because every time someone wants to change one single thing inside a model on SPDX and the version, we need to coding this inside. So this is not feasible at all to make it work. So what they did, and exactly the same thing to ORT, is working other way around. I'm generating from the origin, in this case, in my case for ORT, generated from the model what it comes from the ORT. So I have a real model from the ORT designed version there. It means that every time I get all the data there, and I can actually dynamically adapt the data for specific things. That could actually work completely for SPDX 3.1. So if you actually give me profile with specific version there's in a model, in a parsable model, I can auto dynamically adapt for whatever language that I use it. And since the database that we decided to use in hybrid way, so it means what is doesn't changeable, like for example, data information for project, it's becoming a traditional SQL model, but for the data that is usually variable, like for example, things that can be changed inside profiles, we can do it in a JSON model. So it means the data could be automatically updated independent of the model and recognize it. So yeah, I was thinking very clearly about this and looking around. So who decided how the model of the code goes is actually the guys that write the spec and not us deciding what goes there and where. And that should be the right thing. So it means that SPDX guys do their job, and when you do our job, understand what they did, but not try to reinvent it, what they did in our way to make it things. This is something that plagued around us a lot of all the tooling. So the idea in the end is we make it things generic that every application could use everywhere. And that's the end goal is that this is not related to what you see. That's exactly the separation that's happening right now. For example, in SW260, what you see is depending what you decided to show, but the database itself, and that's completely decouple everything, need to have all the data that comes, for example, for SPDX 3.1, 2.x or Cyclone DX profiles. That's exactly the goal. So the backend could be retrieve and write all these things automatically. The interface, different thing. We adapted the way that needed. So now we are completely decoupling the interface for what is about to get inside the database. And that is the big win that is started from July and SW360. If you want to use SW360 without any interface, you can.
And then the next question came up for me. So if I would really now collect, so let's assume in 2030 or something like that, we have an SPDX 3, whatever, 4. And there you have all the fields where you can holistically describe your system. And I would collect this information along the supply chain, right? So open source project would put its information, then the software vendor, until the end, until it goes to the OEM in the market. And I collect all those albums with all those metadata. So I thought, what is then the difference between that and the digital twin thingy, right? Because at the end, we already have communities about digital twins also collecting all this supply chain data, so that you have this supply chain security, safety, etc., no child work, etc. So I think here we also need to be careful that we're not reinventing the wheel, but so that we have also a global look what is already there. So digital twin stuff is mainly focusing on the hardware components, and that's impressive what you can see, okay, in the car, which part was produced where and where is it running, etc. And if we can manage this here with that tooling as well, so then we would have the same for software components, right? So where I can just ask into the system, okay, hey, where is the one guy in Nebraska living who made this little component in this car that is currently running in this city, things like that. And so I think the whole picture gets a little bit bigger than today.
To do that, we need a fourth component that is really not SW6 or not one of those ones. And we're talking with software heritage thing. So these guys are producing what you're asking. But since the thing that we never connected that deep with them, it's about time to us to think about, because they are the guys that have the capability to create what you ask. We can use it based on a formal description there, but it's not a place that us have a capability to create and put it inside our database by ourselves. All the things that are highly complex to make this was software heritage already had this ones. They just never like say targets in the way that we want today. Remember that you asked about that model of software heritage to try to use inside companies like replicators. You asked it in Stuttgart. Basically, the idea is correct. They have all the capability to get this information that you want. We have the capability to actually looking for this information and format in the way that is feasible to people to see. But we cannot replicate this big thing that you asked ourselves in 1, 2, or 5 years. We don't have persons or companies itself. But then, if you're starting to talk with guys of software heritage, maybe you get a win on these ones.
Yeah, Shane just mentioned, you're spoiling already.
Topic 3, but let's jump right in. Software heritage API access. I had a meeting with Roberto in Tokyo, and he said they're almost ready to give API access to our database for open source tools for open source compliance. So I'm going to ask Roberto and technical team to come on one of these calls and to talk it through with us, what they can do and what are the limitations. I understand that the biggest challenge will be not exposing the APIs. He told me that after 10 years, they're basically ready, but just making sure that the version of the database that allows the API access has the capacity. So, who will host that? Who will take the cost? Just flagging that that's coming, which is interesting, Helio. It might be our end solution if we discuss with them and work it out.
Yeah, I would not say the end solution, but to say a solution. That is, and if we don't have anything right now. If you not do anything, we don't know that is right or wrong. So this looks like the best approach that we can have right now, but we never made it as a proof to us.
Yeah, right. And also software heritage, or at least Roberto, he's very focused on his baby and the community, what is cool. But especially as you and I and Oliver, I think from the big companies, we would also need to have a way to leverage this setup as Helio mentioned. So therefore I was asking Roberto, could I copy paste that within my company? And the combination of that I would think is then the solution, right? So we have a shared software heritage database with all publicly available stuff, and then each of us has its own internal instance, and therefore I was also pushing that in the SPDX, to be honest, this business operations profile, say, okay, but if we well, on the software repository whatever level, I think it's easy to get alignment of what are the standard fields. But if we want then also to work with the same tooling in our instances, ideally to be able to collaborate on the tools, we also should have a standard of, yeah, now all the additional metadata that we need in our organizations to handle things. And as what Helio said, project portfolio management, etc., so that not I need again to translate and map data, but that ideally we not on the content level, but on the interface level, we have an agreement. Okay, everyone calls this, and everyone uses the same IP IDs, ID formats, etc., etc. Yeah. But this could be really the future.
And we have a question, by the way. This is going sort of back to topic one, but I'll tell you what. Let's just call it topic something. There was a comment about the Fosslite code base, which was just that there was stuff in Korean. And Wanjay wanted to check, do you mean comments in the code itself or on GitHub?
I can't tell, to be honest. I just, because I never had a look, but this was very early in the beginning, but I think it was comments in the code, if as far as I remember, but would need to talk to our development team.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dig into that as a future one. Yari had two things. He had one thing where he was asking if Software Heritage is thinking of opening API access, would there be a fee for commercial players, etc.? And that's a good point. If Software Heritage opens API access, who's going to take the cost center? That's very much to be determined. And I think the key thing is with Roberto, from the discussion we had in Tokyo, he wants to talk with us, with the OpenChain project, the OpenChain tooling work group, to talk about what's needed to make this happen. And on his side, he's already thinking about cost and hosting. So there's multiple options. There's could some companies sponsor it? There's also the option of what about a country? What about a digital agency that might sponsor it for the country's companies? So this has to be talked. This has to be talked about. And then when it comes to commercial or for-profit entities, I think that's another one where it might be like, okay, so for-profit SCAs should probably cover the cost of what they want to do. But it's something we'll have a discussion with them and we'll find out more. By the way, Wanjay just said that he's going to help communicate with the Fosslite team if anybody needs help there. So we can call this a success. We have a new dialogue open. And Marcel just flagged that organizational overconsumption may occur, which is where people hammer a database or service. Yes, you're right. I mean, if Software Heritage opens APIs, the problem is that everyone might use it. And so it's only 2 terabytes of data, but if that's being hit to scan code bases, like one Japanese company told me they're doing 150,000 scans an hour. So yeah, saturating databases will be a real issue. Let's get.
We're already, Stefano. He's really smart guy. He already took this into account, right? So Roberti tried to explain to me so that it seems with this graph database that you can have a mirror of this graph, so you do not need to have the whole database, but only you mirror this one, and then you can make all those requests and balance that within your organization. So, but my hint was more to the question of Yari. So I would expect that we would need some kind of commercial offering here around that to Otherwise, you would really kill it from as soon as, at least I think if only Bosch would use this with our all accesses, I think we could bring down the performance very, very quickly.
Sounds like a threat. Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a great point. And yeah, I mean, they have done a really good job in making the database resilient, but it's going to be a lot of hits for multinationals, and CI/CD pipelines. Just imagine. Well, okay, let's do something magical and jump back. There's a new SCA tool coming from China. It'll be formally announced on the 22nd of July. They'll do a webinar. Now, I wanted to flag this because this will be the second major SCA announcement from China that's open source tooling for open source compliance. I've just posted the announcement. Ooh, my link was broken. I'll just fix that. Yeah, I've posted the announcement link in the chat if you want to practice your simplified Chinese. But if you don't, the long story short is that this is from a company called SecTrend, who have a commercial offering, and they, have long been thinking about what about an open source version of the tool. Another company in China, XMirror, released an open source version of their tool about 2 years ago, and that was a command line interface tool. That what is used in China and so on, though XMirror has had less momentum on building their open source tool and sharing it further. So the interesting thing we have here is that SecTrend is I think it's fair to say, a bigger company. They have a whole bunch of clients like Huawei and ByteDance. And this SCA tool, the open source version, will just be one of those other examples of options in the marketplace. I'm going to make a wild guess here, and my wild guess is that the code comments will be in Chinese. But they are planning to do a webinar in English, and they do want to look at working with the international community. And I think an adjacent point is that SecTrend has really community-oriented people involved in the company. Like our old board member, King from Huawei, is now one of the founder team at SecTrend. So we can probably open a dialogue about coordination with them. And that opens questions, which takes us back to FOSSLite as well. To what extent do we see FOSSLite or this new tool fitting into European or American communities? And I say that because, FOSSLite, which I believe uses ScanCode and ORT as plugins, and has a GUI dashboard and so on. It's used by companies in Korea like LG Electronics, LY Corp. I don't see it used so much outside of Korea. So, is there a language barrier or feature barrier? What's going on? How do we work with all of these people so we don't duplicate effort? Open question. Anyone got any suggestions?
We made a study on this one. It's not about the tool itself, but it's about that it's all the tools like SW360 that are perceived as company tooling, not open source tooling. Like SW360 is a Siemens, maybe Toshiba thing. FOSSLite is seen like the LG thing, and everyone perceives these things are made for them, always steering by them. So it means like if these companies take some decision to want to change something, they do, even if affects different vendors. So it means that people are afraid to use outside. It's the basic thing. So you need to change the perception for all the tools. You need to change the perception that it's really an open source tool. And honestly, we failed a lot in the past, both LG presentation and us. We showed to everyone, explain it, but we not make it like in the way that is easy accessible.
Great point.
It's just a question of perception and not about anything. So they'll become niche applications now.
Plus, perhaps to add, to this is so those Software C60, Fosslite, I think mainly addressing the bigger companies, right? Because as a small company, you do not need to manage all this. And in the big companies, you're typically not starting on the green field. You have some legacy tools already. Worst case, then also already commercial tooling. And so it would always be on top of or next to something, and introducing such bigger tools like that is you do not do that twice, right? So if you go there once, you stay there because of these onboarding hassles and efforts that you do. So yeah, so that's just my observation. So that makes it also hard for us. So because I would have loved to say, hey, cool, let's try that out, but that has such a lot of consequences and impacts then in the tooling landscape internally that is also an additional point.
I can address one of the architectural problems of these tools itself. There's Fosslite never had this scan code ORT in the origin. Never does. So the architecture was not made by that, but they artificially introduced it as plugins inside Fosslite, scan code and ORT, because everyone started using. So it's you are connecting something that was never designed on the origin without changing the origin of the architecture. And SW36 is exactly the same thing. Every time that we change it, for example, an SPDX and Cyclone DX model was chaotic because it was never designed to actually adapt for these ones, because the model was so rigid that any change that you did on any of the tools, it like we need to spread around changing codes everywhere. That makes the tool unstable. So architectural things are not completely right of this. That's why I tell this tooling age at the point. That's one of the reasons that we are now separating completely the whole UI and the database from the backend logic architecture. So this we can be future proof for this rapid changes there. So we need both tools need to change. Unfortunately, I'm very curious of this Chinese tool.
And I don't want to put you on the spot too much, Wanjay, but I was just wondering if your audio is working. Could you let us know which companies are involved in Korea at the moment? Are they all very big ones?
Yeah, I don't remember really. The study was done for 2 years ago when we were.
Yeah, it was a while back. I just Wanjay's on the call, and he might be able to tell us who's currently involved, just out of curiosity, if it's still giant companies or it's wider. I can't hear you at the moment. Oh, you're unmuted. Yeah.
Is it working now? Oh, so there are some companies in Korea that is currently using Fosslite. Actually, Fosslite Hub. There's LY Corporation that you mentioned. Actually, it's a Japanese company, but anyway, the base is in Korea. And Hyundai Motor Group, the companies in Hyundai Motor Group is using it. And there are some local companies, and then some government-linked organizations. Is that your question?
Yep. Yeah. Just on who's involved at the moment. It does indeed. What we should probably do. I mean, Halio pointed out a very interesting challenge. I think it was for both SW360 and Fosslite, just architectural. It might be useful if we had a discussion about architectures and the future. And am I right, Halio, that SW360 is being re-architected right now? I think Halio's muted at the moment.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that's correct. So the big major things like clean up the old code is almost done. We just needed get rid of one important thing called tree fit. Marcel knows very well about that. And then with it's like the SW6 will be clean. Then the second step 2 will be really the completely database separation that is becoming independent. But yes, this is exactly the state right now. And the thing that it will happen because we will use it inside Career. This is a 150% need for us to make it reality happens.
Sounds good. Okay, let's keep this dialogue open. I mean, one thing we probably need, because it's been about 2 years since the tooling workgroup looked at Fossilite, we probably need the Korean team to let us know if there's been any updates on the code base and where it's at. We probably need the Chinese team over at SegTrend to really dig us into what they're up to, so we can see is it complementary or overlap, etc., etc.
One hint, Shane, what would make it, I think, a little bit easier to promote those open source tools is to have some public available reference. So what we already tried in the past, and unfortunately there at that time with ORT was with Eclipse already using ORT for their project portfolio. So it was running, it was impressive, but it was also hard to maintain. So therefore also we made this step with the ORT server. So I think they told it yesterday with Octet EU that maybe the Octet EU solution will also be used then within Eclipse for their portfolio, and they have 2,700 repositories, right? So this is comparable to a bigger organization that would need such a management system around that. What we observed, unfortunately, is that in the LFX tool development, no one ever reached out to us, right? Here, neither to ORT or here to the tooling group, but they just did their own stuff. And maybe you can have talks to, I had a name, I have to find out who it is, but they also need something like that, right? With CRA, etc. Everyone needs kind of a overall picture of what projects, what repositories do we have here, and that might be a cool opportunity also for Linux Foundation or CNCF or whatever, any sub foundation that says, okay, for our projects we also want to have something like that, to have a central open source management system with all the metadata. And then if they choose Software 360, Fossilite, whatever, then we would have the convenience of, if there's another interested organization, company say, I would like to have Fossilite or Software 360, how could it work? Then you could just show, look, this is how it works in Linux Foundation. This is how it looks in Eclipse Foundation, etc., and then just copy paste it if you want, right? And this is missing because the applications, in my point of view, are so customized, Carriot for Carriot, Porsche for Porsche, Bosch for Bosch, etc. So it is hard. So we can invite them and show, but you will never be able to copy paste it as is. You always need to do some customization for your organization, and at that point we will stop showing what we have, to be honest. But to have some neutral ground, like one of those foundations, being there as a role model or publicly available instance, that would be super great, I think, for promotion.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see if we can get a dialogue open. I see that Harshad from Carl Zeiss is typing in the comment section. Okay, he just said this new SCA tool has CNNVD database. Harshad, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, Nicholas, the SCA tools or the databases, when it comes to vulnerability, we often struggle that, hey, does it support the China vulnerability database? And I was just looking into the link you shared, and they explicitly say that this tool will support the CNNVD database. So maybe this could also be a thing or interesting fact about this tool.
That's a very good point.
Just to say, just a small comment. I know that no one wants to talk about that, but it's a Chinese tool, even being open source. this will create troubles us on the other side of the pond, right? Just is I really don't care. Europe shouldn't really don't care, but you know, you understand what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, it's a valid point. I mean, we do have trade tensions and so on. I guess it's one of those things where in every direction this will apply. I mean, we have the discussion in Europe coming about Eurostack. I know in Japan we have the discussion about, how do you deal with digital sovereignty? So yeah, we're in a situation where we might be looking at some regional tools being used for certain uses, partly because of tensions. But maybe that's not a bad thing. I mean, if all the tools are providing us with the right SBOMs and supporting the necessary regulations, maybe that's okay. Yeah, this is a great point from Harshad. People forget that CVE is just one vulnerability database and that China has its own database and regulations, which is an interesting point. Yeah. But Helio, I mean, you've hit something on it. We have a very interesting and diplomatic situation for the open source community, where because of tensions between geography, in some cases it might be difficult to. It would be difficult for everyone to use one code base and say this is the global solution, but it's from picking a country randomly, Malta, because then it would be like, okay, so it's the EU solution. Yes, unless it was Irish, which is my country, because everyone loves the Irish. If we made a solution, what? Okay, great stuff.
At some point, I think we had this idea 25 years ago, like relocate all the open source developers to some boat, or remember that independent nation that runs inside a very ship there.
Oh yeah.
We move everyone there, so we are untouched for anyone, so you can do whatever you want.
I remember that. That sounds good.
Yeah.
For those of you who are new, in our community, we used to think even bigger. And at that point, it was going to be like an independent nation of open source with our own regulation.
I'm still thinking that we have some oil stations like that we can actually hand to use it in the middle of the sea.
There are. There's one parked in Norway, I think, which is not being used. I'm sure they'd like to get rid of it. There you have it. On this call, we have the preview of the independent open source nation, which may be our solution.
It's a nice name for a group anyway.
It's a good name for a group. We can make t-shirts. And as of the last board meeting, it's well known to the board I'm going to be making more t-shirts, so I'm sure the budget is fine. They might, well, it depends how many. I mean, they might hesitate with 10,000 t-shirts, but let's see. It's time for any other business. A question to the team. What are you seeing out there? Are people talking about CRA, other regulations, supply chain adoption challenges? What's going on? And is it getting easier to use open source tools for open source compliance or not? What do we do? There's a lot of small to medium enterprises especially, and that was reminded by the Octet project that they're focusing on that. There's a lot of smaller companies that just don't have the expertise of picking randomly here, Helio and Marcel in this field. What are you seeing out there? Are things getting better? Are people still struggling? What's going on?
The struggling part?
Mm-hmm.
That's mostly happened there. Everyone is struggling because we have too many incomplete tools right now. So just we are giving some kind of ammunition for the proprietary software to sell things that actually they don't do well as well. But but they can promise, and since it's not showing to anyone what it's doing right there, people buy it. But the struggling part is pretty much real because it's very difficult to people knows what to use. Whatever tool that you're thinking about, let's say you go over Fossology, over ORT, over Deja Code, it's not easy for small companies there.
Yeah. This is sort of a loaded question. I mean, I'm asking it because I kind of know the answer is we're still not there yet.
Yeah.
So we need to do it. Oh, by the way, Yari solved the t-shirt problem. He's saying we should sell t-shirts as a funding model. Well, why not? This can be your new duty as in the OpenChain project, Yari. You're the sales coordinator. Okay, so we have to deal with the small businesses. We have to make this easier. We're still not there. But this call shows that, you know, more and more projects are working together. More and more people are turning up. I think this is one of the first times we've had some Q&A with the Korean and European teams meeting. And
perhaps
as an
to your
outcome
question, I sorry, I was muted.
Oh.
I just wanted to share something I learned last week about the US, but in the automotive context, so maybe not interesting for everyone, but maybe this will also spread also in other industries. But here for the import, they're getting more and more restrictive there, as it seems. And the interesting thing, if you open that link, it is that there's a section that says, okay, and this is really odd, because it says, if you have software from Russia, from China, etc., they want to really know everything about it. And that if you provide your software, you also need to provide then potentially disclose the source code, etc., etc. And the cool thing is there's an exception, and guess what this exception means? There's an exclusion refinement of open source software exclusion, right? So if it's open source, then, well, you're excluded. And that might give us a push, I think, heavily on at least in the automotive industry. So it's in the middle section above this compliance mechanisms. If you scroll down, there's a title, compliance mechanisms, and exactly above this it says refinement of the open source software exclusion. So if you only use open source, then you're fine. If not, then you do need to do all this hassle that is described on the upper part. So that might be a strong motivator, right? To go
Marcelo, I made the internal joke in Cariad because a lot of lawyers and some managers come to me explicitly talking about this, right? Talking about that we cannot use in Chinese software inside US cars, etc., etc. And I point exactly this one to them and say, okay, you can do our tooling in open source and problem solve it.
Yeah.
They look at me like completely baffled about what you're talking about.
Because additionally, you never know. So what at the end, what do they mean with Chinese or Russian or influenced by Chinese or Russian government? Yes, it could be everyone. It's your grandfather, your great grandfather. So what qualifies you to be part of this? And this would require such a high transparency, especially here in Germany. You have this GDPR, data protection, so things sometimes you are not even allowed to know about things like that, etc. So at the end, maybe open source might be the only solution left at the end.
That's a good argument to go to every manager and every company owner. There's ask then what is more important for this company, the software that they are using or their data? It's obviously the data. So who cares really about the software is open source or not, as long as your data is safe in your hands? That's exactly the argument. I can use 3 different softwares, but the data is always the same. And this is the only business of my company. The software has nothing to do. Yes, the very small specific cases, like you have a gain of algorithms, other things, different history. But normalizing in our space that we are talking here about, the data is the thing. That's it.
And this applies in every direction. Just giving two examples. I saw today that the U.S.-Japan tariff discussions are not going well. So, tensions could rise there and lead to new regulations. I know in Europe, there's serious concerns about geographic tension with multiple parties, including, for example, Russia, including as well the US. So in every direction, we're looking at complexity. And Marcel, it was really good to see this information that in the US, we're seeing an exclusion for open source software. I know in Europe for the CRA, we see some carve outs as well. Maybe this is a good path. We're nearly at time. So I wanted to give one last thing, because this is like the one more thing from our open source adventures in Denver. We had a talk at the open source, OpenChain mini summit. And it was the very final talk. In fact, we had it at the very, very end, at 12 o'clock, which was 3 hours in. And it was from Lockheed Martin. It was Chris Wood, the chair of our spec team. And he was talking about quantum cryptography. Apparently, IBM is on a roadmap to finalize a machine that will be able to run quantum cryptographic computation with, I think it's 3,000 qubits, and it's slated for release in 2029. And that collapses our timeline for quantum encryption from 10 to 30 years down to 4. Now, what's interesting about that is it will make a whole bunch of algorithms obsolete. And there are recommendations, for example, in the US, not to use certain algorithms, but the transition isn't full. It's not done yet. And it looks like we're nearly out of time. And this will, of course, impact open source infrastructure. So, for example, if anyone's using SHA-1, still using that, it looks like 2029 is when potentially instant decryption of that will be occurring. And Chris flagged another thing, which is that at the moment, the biggest threat is that people are hoovering up all the data they can find, which is encrypted using algorithms that will be insecure. And that vacuuming of the data is in anticipation that in 4 years they can start decrypting everything and seeing what they've got. From our perspective, that might mean a huge regulatory challenge coming very fast. I just wanted to flag that because it was kind of cool, and the full talk should be out maybe next week.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then you need to think about it's not only the two ones that you mentioned. If you think about it, the hashes of verification of every single source code in the planet is using an algorithm that basically is susceptible to clash using quantum computing.
Exactly. This is going to be one of the biggest new challenges for open source that we've ever seen, because we're going to have to address it.
Can I mention something about that?
Yeah.
XPDX started like 2 months ago a crypto team, a crypto group to create a cryptographic algorithm list, the equivalent of the license list. The idea there is to have a standardized way to declare crypto algorithms in SBOMs as the first step towards being able to meet any regulation and to understand which crypto algorithms are you inheriting from your supply chain, and if you are safe from the quantum perspective or not. So it all starts with detection and declaration, and you cannot detect. I mean, you can, but it's easier to detect the algorithms you have if you have a standardized way to declare them. So what the SPDX group is doing at the moment. And let's see if we have the first draft of that list by Open Source Summit Europe. I'm not very optimistic. The group lacks cryptography knowledge at the moment. It's mostly formed by security people and also by experts in SPDX or in detection. But we need still some knowledge in cryptography. So you will hear from that group and from XPDX a call for joining. Also, we are meeting very narrow scope of use cases. We probably will need to, I mean, at the start, that's not a bad thing, because at the end, you want a list that is useful for somebody. And then as more use cases come, the complexity will rise.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, the use cases we are looking at are very narrow and few, which is, again, for the point at where we are, is not a bad thing. So I'm aware of the effort that IBM is doing for raising the voice on this topic. And yeah, so if you think that somebody from your company should collaborate, we are welcoming there in that group help. So it would
Thank you,
be
Lucas.
good.
And I know that a few months ago we worked with you and the team. Oh, bye, Helio, Marcel, and Harshad. They just dialing out. I know we worked with you and the team at ScanOSS as you were building cryptographic information to make it freely available to the community. So it all ties together. Yari asked, "Is Michael from IBM? Which Michael?" Chris. Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. Chris Wood. Chris Wood is who talked about this, is not from IBM. He's from Lockheed Martin, which is a U.S. defense company. It's a small startup that makes things like the F-35 fighter. But Chris works in a lot of security stuff, and he has been involved through SC27. That's ISO's ICT security committee. He's been involved with emerging standards around things like cryptographic algorithms and approaches to cryptography as quantum stuff comes online. Now, the IBM development is very public. It's been in some of the news, but because it's part of a huge batch of announcements around cryptography and IBM's quantum efforts, honestly, I didn't notice it until Chris really highlighted it. Oh, Yari said he was talking about Michael Osborne. I don't know Michael. I must admit. Let's try and hunt him down and bring him in. Maybe he can tell us more.
Michael is based in Zurich, at least he used to be based in Zurich.
Oh, at the IBM research facility.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, let's try and find him. That'd be great. Yeah. Okay, let's try and find Michael and see if he can tell us something about this. Brilliant. Okay, we're way over time because we were so busy having fun. So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for a great meeting. And, I will see you next time. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.